Welcome back to Inhale Life Conversations from the Chicago Asthma Consortium, the podcast where we explore science, systems, and stories that are shaping asthma care in Chicago and beyond. Today's episode is a really special one. We're joined by Dr. Raoul Wolf, who's been a key figure in the history and evolution of the Chicago Asthma Consortium. And so, in the first part of our conversation, we're going to take a step back and explore how the consortium came to be, what gaps it was trying to fill, the early challenges, and how it's really grown into a collaborative force for improving asthma outcomes across our region. Then we'll shift gears and dive into a critical clinical topic because it is May, National Asthma Month. And we'll be talking a little bit about comorbid conditions in asthma, from allergic rhinitis to obesity, and we'll kind of discuss about how these overlapping conditions influence asthma control and what clinicians and health systems can do about it. So Dr. Wolf, of course, brings both a historical perspective and clinical insight into this conversation, and I really think everyone will find it informative and thought-provoking. So I'll introduce myself. I forgot to do that at the beginning, but I'm Sharmila Nienhuis, and I am a professor of pediatrics and medicine at the University of Chicago, where Dr. Wolf also spent quite a bit of his career there as well. So welcome, Dr. Wolf, to the podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Nienhuis.
Yeah. So, I just want you to kind of start us off, taking us back to the early days of the Chicago Asthma Consortium and what problem or gap really led to its creation.
Well, it's probably easier to start with the gap, which was huge.
Mhm.
There was an enormous disparity between patches of research and investigation that were going on into epidemiology and distribution of asthma. There was a huge disparity in care. Areas of Chicago really had no care whatsoever. And there were disparate efforts to try to bring all that together. Um, so probably the major problem and difference was not just initial care, but ongoing care.
Mm.
And it was very difficult. It was difficult for people in indigent circumstances to actually receive ongoing care. It was difficult for them to get to it. Um, just as an example, at that time and for quite a long time after, areas like Englewood had no pharmacy. There
Mm.
was no pharmacy in the Englewood area.
Huh.
And that to complicate it more, there's one hospital, St. Bernard, which desperately tried to fill the gaps, and an impossible task.
Mm.
One of I say genius efforts to address it was really the brainchild of Sidney Parker,
Mhm.
who's a PhD who was at the College of Chest Physicians and was originally from Chicago.
Mhm.
And her concept was to bring together people involved in the care and try to coordinate it,
Mhm.
try to bring together what was a terribly disorganized system or series of systems. And she collaborated with what was then the American Lung Association of Chicago and then became the Respiratory Health Center
Association.
of
Yeah.
of Chicago
Mhm.
when they broke away from the parent body.
Um,
At the time, Alan Shaw was director of the program here, and so together they approached people who were active in the field, um, and that resulted in the fledgling concept of a consortium,
Hmm.
um, which was really I don't know if I can say it was the first or the original, but it was very close to being the first or the original.
Yeah, yeah. What were some of the initially kind of the challenges in getting the consortium off the ground?
Well, I would say getting people interested was probably the hardest.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, I, I think I told you that that when Alan approached me, I said, "Yeah, right. You know, everybody's got time to do this." He said, "No, no, we are meeting a couple of times a year." I believed him, which was probably a mistake. It was not a meeting a few times a year.
Yeah.
Um, Interestingly, though, people who were very active in asthma, people like Kevin Weiss, Ted Narikas, and many others, um, um, who saw it as an opportunity. Kevin, in particular, Dr. Kevin Weiss, in particular, is an epidemiologist
Hmm.
and an enormous collaborator. He would collaborate with anybody if it would get the job done.
Yeah.
And so he certainly was very interested in it. The idea behind it was very strongly to involve everybody from the ground up. And that in itself was a totally novel concept.
Yeah. Yeah, that is. And I do feel like it is something that they've kind of stayed true to, is trying to continually to involve everybody and work with everybody instead of, keeping everyone silos. So, yeah.
Well, there are a few interesting stories of different levels which I can mention if
Yeah.
we come to them.
Yeah.
Um, but initially, the initial group actually did consist of physicians very much involved in asthma and doing research in the field, nurses also who were very interested and involved, but more important, um, parents,
Mhm.
parents and community leaders. And that, I think, is what made the consortium what it is, was that base. I think there was a solid base. For example, people were using caseworkers, mostly social workers, to visit homes,
Mhm.
which was doomed to failure. Um, the percentage of people actually being allowed into people's homes was under 20%. Um, and, communities like Englewood are very suspicious of, the social worker comes calling, there's trouble.
Mhm.
Something's wrong, otherwise they wouldn't be calling. Um, so they're very suspicious and very resistant. So the genius change was making the community people the caseworkers.
Mhm.
That made all the difference because these were their friends. These were people they knew they could trust,
Mhm.
and people are more willing to open up. Um, so that made an enormous difference. Um, it did take a while to get off the ground. It was, from um, probably 3, 4 years or more. The initial support for it came predominantly from the American College of Chest Physicians and from the Lung Association.
Mhm. Yeah. And so you mentioned it took a few years, 3 or 4 years to kind of feel like, okay, this is actually working. And where was there a specific moment or time that that you kind of felt that way? Like, was there like an educational event or other things?
Well, there were several educational events that were done,
Hmm.
and most importantly, I think, was the presentation of these at the annual College of Chest Physicians meeting.
Hmm.
It sort of distributed the idea. And there was, in fact, by about the third year, I think, um, and Sydney Parker was also involved in coordinating the chest meetings, the annual meetings. So
Mm.
she did have a definite entree to getting a platform for the association. She, I think she actually started and persuaded the board, the college, that there should actually be an annual platform for consortia. And there were several, by the third year, I think, there were actually from several cities, people presented on their version of the consortium. Um, most striking to me, I still remember clearly, was the group from San Francisco,
Mm.
which dealt largely with a Han population who there's no written form of language, apparently,
Hmm.
and which added another layer of difficulty. There
Yeah.
were also a lot of very toxic um, garbage dumps that a lot of places where they were built. So, that was a very difficult approach. I think that annual meeting did an enormous amount to give people an aha moment. Hey, wait, we can do this.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
this, this can work.
Hmm. Yeah. What would do you see as kind of the most meaningful contributions that Chicago Asthma Consortium has given to asthma care in Chicago itself?
Quite honestly, I'm not even sure how one would measure it.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
think it
that's
was
true.
enormous. I think
Yeah.
it was enormous.
Yeah.
Um, Even through the struggles that it had from around 2003 to, oh, I don't know, many years. Um, and big surprise, most of them financial.
Yeah.
Um, but through that, I think that the people who really were committed to it remained committed.
Hmm.
And I think that was enormous. The There were many research uh, papers that came out of it,
Hmm.
but more important, I think, was finding ways to integrate the community in ways that would help. For example, in Englewood, there was a huge push to involve religious leaders, and once the religious leaders were on board, it became much easier.
Yeah.
If your minister is telling you, listen, guys, asthma's bad, you should go and see to it. Um, I don't know if it was the work of the consortium or not, but Englewood got its first Walgreens, so I'm quite willing to believe in association. Uh,
Yes.
we
Yes.
don't have to have pure causation here. I'll
Yeah.
take association,
Yeah.
and just the fact that they did get their first Walgreens. They also first got their food store,
Hmm.
which was a Whole Foods,
Yeah.
which made no sense to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There
But
should have been an Aldi's or something.
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So um, I just think that there is that the impact was so far-reaching that I really believe it changed asthma care.
Hmm.
in a complex city like Chicago.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, thank you for sharing that history and the impact that the Chicago Asthma Consortium has had. I believe that this is our 30th year of the
yes, it is.
consortium. Yep. So it's
1996.
yeah. Yeah, so it's exciting to kind of go down memory lane to start really thinking about how it started and all the impacts that it has had since starting. Um, so great. So I want to kind of shift to the next phase of our talk today because again, it's not only the 30th anniversary of the CAC, but May is also National Asthma Awareness Month. And, we've had a lot of different topics that we've talked about on this podcast, but I think one thing that we haven't really touched upon is really thinking about like comorbid conditions in asthma. And, how would you say, when we think about asthma today, how important is it to view it through this lens of thinking about comorbid conditions rather than just asthma alone?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would say is I think it's wrong not to see asthma as a complex condition with multiple impacts. And the converse of that is that not everything that looks like asthma is asthma.
Hmm.
And both of those lenses, I think, are very, very important. It's important to distinguish when it's not asthma,
Yeah.
and also to distinguish what the many comorbid factors are. And some of them are obvious, of course. It's tobacco use by the patient, by the
Hmm.
family, in the building, um, and problems with marijuana use for asthmatics. I mean, people think, well, it's a safe drug, but it's a burning leaf. It's no different. It's no different from tobacco,
Hmm.
and it has many of the same alkaloids. And it's a problem.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
Smoke, any type of smoking, any burning leaf is a problem.
Yeah.
Um, Maintaining good nutrition is important. And probably the most important one, which sometimes is overlooked, many times is overlooked, is of course allergies.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, probably 80% of asthmatics have an allergic component.
Yeah. And how does that, you're kind of getting into my next question as far as, how does allergies like allergic rhinitis really impact asthma control in practice? Like how often did you see it really impacting asthma control?
Well, to be facetious, I guess that depends if you're talking to an allergist or a pulmonologist.
That's very true.
Um, but obviously, um, there's a huge IgE allergy component to asthma. I mean, we
Mm,
know that. And probably more complex about it is not the immediate sneezing reaction with allergy, but very much response, the delayed response, which is much more leukocytes.
mhm.
So the delayed response is much more of a significant factor.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so allergy is obviously a huge comorbid factor, and environment in other ways. Mentioned smoke, tobacco smoke, other things, other odors, animals in the environment,
Yeah.
not only allergic but for other reasons. Um, Insanitary conditions. Uh, it's a familiar list.
Yes, yes, yeah. Now, one of the other like common comorbid conditions is, obesity. And so can you talk about that asthma obesity connection and mechanisms might be driving that?
Well, yes, because in two ways. I think that what drives it is in two ways.
Mm-hmm.
A child who has asthma and cannot, I think we're talking mainly about children, but adults, it
Yes.
applies to
Yeah.
adults too.
Uh-huh.
Um, but sometimes pediatricians forget that adults are not just big children.
Yep. Yep.
Um, so clearly, an asthmatic can't move as much. They're limited in their activity, and they may more easily put on weight because they're not active. And then that compounds the problem because then there's more weight to move around,
Mm-hmm.
and also puts more strain on breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the um, I think one of the big problems too is the effect on sleep
Mm,
of obesity
it's a good.
and the increased incidence of disordered sleep. And it definitely has been demonstrated that there is a link between sleep apnea and severe asthma.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's been very clearly demonstrated. So, and in fact, there are even immunologic changes that have been shown related to obstructive sleep apnea. So that is yet another factor. And then also someone who happens to be, are we still using morbidly obese? I don't
Yeah,
think so.
I think I
Do we
don't
still
know.
use it? I can't keep up.
Yeah, I can't keep up either. So, but yeah.
Being significantly over uh, a mean and two standard deviations.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, uh, the other issue with that is they have a reduced lung capacity, so that you compound the fact they can't breathe out with the fact they now can't really breathe in either.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly makes it worse. Um, I don't know if you would classify poor adhesion to a regimen as comorbid. It technically isn't, but the effect's the same. So
Yeah.
I think, and and one of the biggest, I'm going to call it comorbid problems, is the price of drugs
Mm-hmm.
and the way whether people can obtain them. I recall I had a large family, all of them with asthma, and um, they would rotate. They would rotate who got the steroid because they
Yeah.
couldn't afford to buy five of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's really challenging, and I know the state of Illinois is trying to address that with their $25 like copay for asthma inhalers or just inhalers, but I'm not sure how the implementation plan has been going. I guess I'll just say that.
Well,
So.
they did start their own um, um, Obamacare. Uh,
Hmm. Yeah.
that wasn't what I was looking for, but
Like managed Medicaid or
thank
yeah.
you.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So what are some practical ways that clinicians can screen for some of these like comorbidities during, the asthma visits that, you mentioned several different ones. But what in your practice when you were practicing, like how did you screen for some of these comorbidities?
Well, I mean, a good history is always a place to start.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with anyone with asthma, the questions should include not only environment, which are never routine questions in a visit,
Mm-hmm.
um, but environment, diet, nutrition, activity, important activity. And obviously, in the environment question is drug and tobacco use, because those some of the environmental factors are beyond people's control, of course. I mean, people who are unfortunate enough to live in projects in Chicago have an enormous environmental load to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those are, but those are questions that can help a lot.
Yeah.
Um, Along with that, I just throw this in because it was a pet peeve of mine. With activity, people should realize, I think, that there's no such thing as exercise asthma.
Mm-hmm.
There's exercise triggered asthma. They still have asthma. It's just that the trigger happens to be exercise, and they need to be treated as a chronic asthmatic if they're continuously having problems.
Yeah.
Um, Albuterol shouldn't
The
be the
go-to.
base the chronic treatment,
Yes, yes.
of
Yeah.
course, of course.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, the family history is helpful too,
Mm-hmm.
of course.
Yeah. Are there any examples from your practice of, where you treated a comorbidity in an asthma patient and that like dramatically improved their asthma control?
Now, unfortunately for your question, most of my practice was complex asthmatics. So I can't really recall any instance where, oh gosh, we got rid of the cat and now everybody's fine and happy. Um, I, there are such instances, but I think with the practice I had, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't think
It's
of
okay.
one. I
Yeah.
do recall when I put my foot in it, the family living in the projects. One of my highest risk asthmatics, um, she was one of the early patients I put on Zolair, and um, and the mother mentioned to me that they could smell their neighbors making meth.
Oh my goodness.
So me, with my big mouth, said,
Uh-huh.
"Well, why don't you call the police?" And she looked at me like I was stark staring crazy. She said, "We'll be dead."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's unfortunately there are a lot of comorbid conditions that are just tough to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely, being able to utilize some of the resources, like you said, case managers or social workers sometimes can be helpful. But as you said, I think sometimes this patient population also is very leery of some of those resources too.
And the problem with those resources, unfortunately, is not only are people they're very expensive,
Hmm.
and those belong in the realm of studies really, and the usefulness is shown, and then it stops,
Hmm. Yeah.
and then the grant comes to an end, and then it stops.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's
the
challenging.
Otto Sprague Foundation that funded the CAC made a point of this. Their purpose was to start things off. They expected that the people they funded would find the means to keep it going.
Mm, yeah. Which they have found some way, but it is challenging, I know. So yeah. Okay, well, anything else to add really again about as we think about like asthma comorbidities, if there's any, big gaps that need to be filled there or
Well,
again.
well, they're huge gaps, I think,
Yes.
still. Even though I've been out of practice for several years, I think there's still huge gaps.
Hmm.
Um, but I think the important thing is that the collaboration that the CAC showed so well is the only way to go.
Hmm.
Asthma is a multifactorial condition,
Yeah.
to state the obvious, and you need a lot of people to deal with it. That it has to be approached from a total point of view, family, environment, and some things we can control, and some things are out of our control. But
Yeah.
I think the important key, I would say, is people have to approach it from a multiple standpoint.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you again, Dr. Wolf,
Well,
for this opportunity to talk to you.
no, thank you for having me. I've
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, this has been great. So that was Dr. Raoul Wolf sharing both the story behind the Chicago Asthma Consortium and his insights into the complex world of asthma and its comorbidities. One of the key takeaways for me is that asthma really rarely exists in isolation, whether it's having comorbidities or comorbid conditions such as allergic disease, obesity, or environmental exposure. These overlapping factors really shape how patients experience and manage their asthma every day. And just like the Chicago Asthma Consortium itself, improving outcomes really requires collaboration across disciplines, systems, and as Dr. Wolf mentioned, across communities. So, again, thank you for listening in to Inhale Life. And until next time, keep working toward better breathing for all.